Why are the Great Lakes so great? That's what we're going to talk about today. Hi, this is Jill from the North Woods talking about nature right outside your front door. Well, the Great Lakes are right outside my front door. They might not be outside your front door, but I bet you have lakes too. I realize that a lot of people didn't know much about the Great Lakes, even when they live in this particular area, or even when they live outside this area. I was showing someone about this map of where I live, and there's a small lake in where I live, and someone said, "Oh, is that a Great Lake?" And I said, "Oh, no, the Great Lakes are huge," and they are huge. The Great Lakes are something that I love. I grew up right by Lake Superior, and it's my favorite lake. It's the Superior Lake, but it is the largest freshwater lake by surface area, and it covers about 31,000 square miles, which is about the size of Austria, according to searching for things. There are more voluminous lakes out there, including freshwater lakes, but as a whole, the Great Lakes are remarkable because they cover so much surface area, and they're responsible for about 20%. They are, all of them, all the Great Lakes are in the top 15 lakes when it comes to surface area. When it comes to volume, they don't top the list, but that's because there are some very, very deep lakes in the entire world, but still an incredible amount of fresh water. To give you a bit of perspective, the Caspian Sea is bigger in surface area, 143,000 square miles, but saltwater. And there's Lake Baikal in Russia, which holds the most fresh water by volume because it's incredibly deep. But Lake Superior holds its own. It's deep, it's cold, it's beautiful. It's really cold, by the way. And when you stand on its shores, you sort of feel like you are on an ocean. You're maybe on the Midwest Ocean. When you look at Lake Superior, which again is my favorite lake, my dad used to take me swimming by this iron ore processing plant. And that sounds really kind of gross, but it is actually beautiful. It was right on Lake Superior. It was near Marquette, Michigan. And the iron ore processing system didn't dump pollution into the lake. What they did is it heated so that it could smell iron ore coming off of the boats right away. And so I had that chance to swim in Lake Superior where it's a little bit warmer. But you do have to be careful. It is deep. It is the coldest. And it is something you should wear a wetsuit if you're not swimming by something that causes it to warm up. But there are people out there who do surf and they do use a wetsuit. What's interesting about Lake Superior, for the most part, is that it's across this ancient volcanic rift. You can still see some of the volcanic remnants in that area. It was called the Mid-Continent Rift System. It is not a crater lake like you might imagine, but the land beneath it was shaped because of this very old rift, and then it contributed to its rugged nature. So it's not one of those beachy kind of lakes where you sit on the beach and you get some sunshine. It's rocky and dramatic, which is why I love it so much. And that's why the shoreline is such a unique geology, including rocks and minerals. And there is something called Yooperlite, which comes from more of this volcanic area. It comes down from Canada and washes up on the shore of the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. I love Lake Superior, like I said, any season. I love going to it and just looking at it. I have a camp spot, and it is right on Lake Superior. My fire pit's right there, and all night long, I just listen to Lake Superior washing up. I wake up in the morning, and I see it. But let's take a look at the other lakes and what they are all about. Like I said, it's about 1/5 of all the viable fresh water on Earth. I said the United States. It's actually all of Earth in fresh water. Lake Superior alone, now, like I said, this is someone who said this, could cover all of North and South America in 1 foot of water if you emptied it out and put a rim maybe around North and South America. But 1 foot of water, that's how much water is in it. Lake Michigan is the only one that's entirely in the United States. It borders with Chicago, Milwaukee, right on the shoreline. Lake Huron has 30,000 islands, including one called Manitoulin Island, which is the largest freshwater island in the world. Lake Erie is very shallow, very warm. It's great for fishing, and that warmer water it makes it more biologically productive of all of the lakes. Lake Ontario connects the lakes to the Atlantic Ocean through what's called the St. Lawrence Seaway, which made it crucial for shipping uh, from the beginnings of time to even and right now. So it is a crucial shipping lane area. The fact is that Lake Michigan and Lake Huron are actually hydrologically one lake. They connect at the Straits of Mackinac. And so they're really at the same water level. They are technically the same lake, but they count as two lakes. And by the way, if you haven't gone to Mackinac, it's gorgeous from what I hear. I've been over the bridge, and it's amazing. The lakes were formed during the last ice age. The glaciers moved across the region, carved out this massive basin where the glaciers melted. That's much of the geography of my area of the wood was carved out from those same glaciers. Those basins then filled with water. And underneath these basins are ancient deposits of salt and sandstone sediment from ancient seas. You will find a number of salt mines underneath some of the Great Lakes. Those basins change all the time. The Earth is doing what is called an isostatic rebound, which means those glaciers scrunched down all the land, like pressed it down, just like if you put your hand on your bed and then it slowly rises back up. That means that the lakes themselves not are rising themselves, but the land around them are shifting, and some of the land is coming up slightly and gradually over thousands of years. And a lot of reshaping is going to take place in what they call this Great Lakes Basin. The lakes aren't going to go away anytime soon, and Superior will never go away, but that idea that it is changing because it used to get pressed down from glaciers. In about the Great Lakes, there's about 6,000 shipwrecks, and one of them was called the Edmund Fitzgerald. There was a guy who made a song in 1979 called the Edmund Fitzgerald, and I thought that this was a very, very old tale of a boat that got sunk by huge storm. Turns out it was in 1975, and this Lake Superior is very tumultuous, has huge, strong storms, inland, what they call inland hurricanes, 30 feet high waves. I had no idea when I was a kid that it was that recent because you sort of think of shipwrecks as being an old thing, but this is a fairly recent thing. And so they are legendary for their stormy weather. I watched that Expedition Unknown show, and they went looking for shipwrecks in Lake Superior. So it is still something that's being looked at. There's so much beauty around each of the Great Lakes. Like I said, some of them are great for fishing. You can fish in Lake Superior. I go camping on Lake Superior, like I said, but I also there's a ferry that takes you out to what is called the Apostle Islands. Beautiful, amazing. One goes to Madeline Island. That's just a ferry you can drive your car on and go to your campground. A couple campgrounds on that island, a couple art stores and some restaurants. But if you really want to be wild, you can hire a boat that will take you and your camping gear to one of the other islands, and then you could just be kind of by yourself on an island. Someday I'm going to do that. But it's just very peaceful to be in almost any parts. There's areas in Munising, which are called Painted Rocks. You'll see boreal forests, wetlands, sand dunes, including the largest freshwater dune in the world along Lake Michigan. And I think it was called Great Bear, but it was the legend that a bear fell asleep on the land and got covered by sand. And that's in the lower peninsula of Michigan. You'll see a lot of migratory birds, rare plants, and unique rocks that you just will not see anywhere else. One of my favorite things is rock hunting in Upper Peninsula, Michigan. I mentioned that I go for Yooperlite, which you can find on any shoreline, as long as it's allowed, with a black light. They glow under that UV light. And you can also find agates. And so rock collecting is great if you're in this particular area. If you look at the history of it, it has been a big part of industry from time at the beginning. The indigenous people used that area for fishing and for trade. I was on a hiking site that is inside of what is called the Porcupine Mountains, and it was a copper mining trail, but that trail had been used by the indigenous people there early on was used also by the European settlers for also bringing copper out of the copper mines, iron too, and bringing them out so that they could bring them to the roads and take them away for processing. Again, fur trading, grain transport, iron ore, and steel were a big part of that particular region. Cities like Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, Toronto, Buffalo all grew because of their connections to the Great Lakes. And in fact, about 200 million tons of cargo travels across the Great Lakes every year. It remains a critical part of the North American economy. And there's even a quirky bit of history. There was actually a war called the Battle of Toledo between Ohio and Michigan in the 1830s. The shots fired between these two states. And the idea is that Toledo is a port city on the Great Lakes, so it's important. So to settle this battle between the two states, Congress gave deference to Ohio because Ohio was a state earlier and gave Toledo to Ohio, moving that border up on Michigan. Meanwhile, Michigan got the Upper Peninsula, which is why you get that little sticky out part at the top, taken away from the Wisconsin territory. And so I think that Michigan won that trade because I'd rather have the UP than Toledo any day. Nothing against Toledo, but, I love the UP. Right now, has been a great deal of restoration going on. They've had troubles here and there. At one point, Lake Erie was so polluted it was considered dead. And thanks to conservation efforts, and they brought it back. And like I said, now there's fishing, there's all sorts of things. Even Lake Michigan around Chicago. My family came from Chicago. Half my family came from Chicago. And I just remember the lake being so polluted. Today, so much more clean than it used to be. And I really appreciate that fact. But still, today, we have some invasive species. There's the zebra mussels, the Asian carp, and there's a lot of runoff. We're talking now a lot about a farm runoff that runs off into the Great Lakes and trying to prevent those risks. So right now, today, we're even seeing how we can take care of them to make sure they stay unpolluted. And again, remember, they provide drinking water to 40 million people, 1.5 million jobs, generate $6 trillion in economic value across industries, and contribute $52 billion to tourism all by itself. The shoreline itself covers about 11,000 miles, and it makes for a longer coast than the East and West Coast combined. It's really an incredible opportunity. It's something I really love doing for recreation, hiking, science. They just found like some sort of weird pyramid thing with a elephant carving at the bottom of Lake Michigan. It's pretty incredible. Well, yeah, and so I think when you don't know much about the Great Lakes, it's understandable. They're in the middle of the United States. You maybe have never seen them before, but they are our freshwater oceans, and they are a big part of the United States. My dad wouldn't let me stand on the shore when I was a little kid, but now I'm an all-grown-up adult, and so if you're a little kid, you should go with your parents, but it's beautiful to stand on the shore, camp on the shoreline if you can, and just look at the vastness of it is. So if you ever get a chance, make sure you go take a chance to go see one, go visit a Great Lakes town if you haven't never been to one. Maybe even read a book about the history of shipwrecks or the cities along those shores. Whether you're from the Midwest like I am or far away, I think we can all appreciate how great the Great Lakes are. And if you ever wonder why Lake Superior is called Superior, well, now you know why, because it's superior in almost every way. Thanks so much for listening. Please remember that you can always email me at jill@startwithsmallsteps.com. You can put a comment right here. I think the comments are right down there. And please, if you've been to a Great Lake, if you have a favorite Great Lake, go ahead and say why you love your Great Lake more than anything else. I appreciate you watching or listening, and have a great week.